This ball of fire, emerging from the Atlantic along the rock and sand-covered beach of what is now Rye, New Hampshire, heralds the coming of a new day in the 21st century, just as it did for New Hampshire's early settlers in the 1600s. The first Europeans in what would become New Hampshire were English fishermen who took up residence along and near the mouth of the Piscataqua River. A few years later, England's King James I offered free ships, passage, and land to anyone brave enough to colonize in the New World. The population expanded and prospered. The royal province grew into small towns, one of which became the community of Portsmouth. In a more recent environment, Money magazine frequently includes Portsmouth in its top 10 places to live. This thriving port city is rich in remarkably well-preserved historic neighborhoods and boasts some of the finest eating establishments north of Boston. Strawberry Bank, or Puddle Dock as it was known to its early settlers, is a beautifully preserved 10-acre museum of 17th and 18th century buildings. A few blocks inland, the residence of John Paul Jones, the father of the American Navy, is just one of the many historic homes within the city. New Hampshire was the first state to declare its independence from England. It was here in 1774 New Hampshire struck the first blows for freedom. An attack by state militia on the British troops garrisoned at Fort William and Mary yielded a significant supply of guns and ammunition, later used in the Battle of Bunker Hill. The state motto, "Live free or die," tells it all. Though New Hampshire has only 18 miles of coastline, they've managed to take advantage of it all. Commercial development, public waterfront, and private homes. In the fall, long sweeping beaches are nearly deserted, but during the summer, jammed with tourists. Presuming there are some sunny days in the fall, it's a nice getaway, and one can actually find a table in the local lobster pound. Fishing, which is what brought the first settlers to New Hampshire, remains an important business. One of 4 original towns in New Hampshire, the community of Exeter, a few miles inland, served as the state's capital during the American Revolution. The Ladd Gilman House, built in 1721, was the Revolutionary State Treasury. Later, it became a tavern. Now, it's the American Independence Museum. One of the country's finest prep schools, founded here in 1781, the Phillips Exeter Academy, has grown considerably from modest beginnings.
This is the fall foliage report for northern New Hampshire for Monday, October 6th, 2003. The foliage colors from Berlin to Colebrook are currently at their height, as the colors further north, while still beautiful, are moving past peak this week. Your best drives this week are along Route 3 from Lancaster to Colebrook, Route 16 from Berlin to Errol, and Route 110 from Berlin to Groveton, taking you past the northern White Mountains.
The colors of fall bring thousands to New Hampshire in October. For many parts of the state, their busiest season. Campgrounds are full, and along routes like the Cancamagas Highway in the White Mountains, leaf peepers, as they're called by the locals, are everywhere.
Try Route 117 from Franconia to Lisbon with a side trip out along Sunset Hill Road for the most spectacular panorama in the mountains. North Conway is progressing nicely as they're about 50% green mixed with 50% color. Well, the foliage report sort of encompasses sort of the beauty of New Hampshire at this time of year, and a lot of people make their travel plans specifically for coming up to New Hampshire just to see this explosion of color that happens every autumn. They look forward to these reports, and these reports are distributed all over the state in the welcome centers, the various media outlets, and it's just a good resource for people to have when they're planning their vacation trips here.
We say New Hampshire is what New England was. Sandwich is also another place that you need to go and visit to get a feeling of what New England and New Hampshire is all about. And it's also a beautiful small country town. It has one of the nicest country fairs in the region. It occurs on Columbus Day weekend. It brings thousands of people from all over the East to come in and experience this phenomenon that is New England.
35,000 people visit the three-day fair, the last in the state until next summer. It's an agriculture fair in the truest sense of the word.
We're here at the New Hampshire Fair judging dairy goats. Dairy goats are a wonderful, wonderful animal. Did you know that more dairy goat milk is drunk than any other mammal milk in the world? More goat meat is eaten than any other mammal milk in the world also. Thank you for stopping by, ladies and gentlemen. We love to see the mammary system, which is where the milk comes from, where the money comes from. We love to see a mammary system that's very well, tightly attached. We love to see a lot of milk, but not too much so that it's spraying that when they walk. We also love to see a goat that has the will to milk, the tremendous strength to sustain it. The height, the levelness, and the length throughout is really important. We also love to see dairy goats that are easy to handle, that are well taken care of. You know, these goats come in by themselves to the barn. They jump up on their little stand. You wash off their udder. They stand there, and they let you milk them. And they're really, really sweet, sweet animals.
There's a huge midway alongside streets of food concessions. The antique tractor pull starts early and runs all day.
I like tractor pulling because it's fun. I've pulled for about 11 years now. I'm an owner of over 20 antique tractors, and it's fun. It's enjoyable. There's at least 2 or 3, maybe 4 antique tractor clubs represented here, and all varieties and conditions of tractors, from fully restored to out-of-the-field tractors, and that's what makes it interesting. Some people like to see as they were or painted up. It all depends upon the individuals and the one who owns it.
This is the little humiliator. It's a weight transfer sled that we use for the tractor pulling. We'll start out with 2,500-pound weight classes, and we go up through to unlimited class, anything over 14,000 probably. It's going to be a good day. The weather's fine. Hope to have a good show for it. As they pull it, the weight box will move forward on this sled, and at that time it puts more weight on the sled. It's a one-time deal. It's not like horse pulling. You put little blocks on every time. It's one shot. You go down through, go as fast as you can go.
There's even a kids' tractor pulling event. It's a great celebration of fall and the changing seasons.
Go easy with the brakes. You don't want to scare them. Wow, you're doing great. Again. Whoa, my goodness. Good job.
The Mount Washington Cog Railway was created by Sylvester Marsh. Some people in the area used to call him Crazy Marsh. He was up hiking on Mount Washington with a friend one day and got turned around and actually became lost. And he decided upon his return, after finally finding his way back, that there should be a better way for people to get to the top of Mount Washington. So he had an idea to create this railway that would take people to the summit of Mount Washington. It was a 3-tracked train, so you have your traditional 2 rails on either side, and a center track is actually this little toothed track. And there would be a gear, a toothed gear, a cog, which was placed underneath the engine, and the cog turned and pulled the train right up the mountain. It was the first of its kind in the world. It's absolutely fascinating, and it's a great experience. It's a great step back in time. It's coal-fired engines. It's a little like the original little train that could. Each one of those little engines has its little slanted boiler. They're so cute, and they just chug away up the mountain, and they puff away, and they bring you up there, and they do their job. They're trusty little engines. They burn about 1,000 gallons of water and a ton of coal for each trip to the summit.
We're steam buffs, and we just love getting on these trains, smelling the coal, getting involved with the heat, dealing with the different weather conditions. For instance, yesterday we got to the top of the mountain. The first thing in the morning it was rime ice, and then by the time we came down from our first trip, which was about 9:30 in the morning or 10 o'clock, it was snowing. The technical aspect behind that is that there are 3 jet streams, major jet streams that pass over Mount Washington that bring in that horrendous weather. And so far, to date, no one else has ever recorded a higher land-based wind than here in Mount Washington.
Oh, shit!
You know, last week we were running the trains till about 3/4 of the way through the day, and we had to stop because the wind started gusting over 80, so we didn't want to go up into after that.
We'll be going off on that siding on the way down. Wanted to make sure everything was working okay before we needed to use it.
We've had, back in the old days, back in the 80s, we had coach roofs that got ripped off from the winds up there. We had an engine roof on the number 10 that was peeled right off it while we were running up the mountain one day, and it was lifted right off and just went gone, you know, and we're like, oh my God, so it was pretty amazing.
Folks, enjoy your trip on the summit. When you get off the train, walk straight that way till your feet hit concrete, turn right, you go inside the summit building.
Stepping off the coach at Mount Washington Summit on a day like this is a breathtaking experience. Temperatures below freezing, blowing snow with wind gusting over 50.
Hi there.
Hang on to your hat and your children.
Our primary job is to take hourly weather observations in which we read outside temperature values such as just regular air temperature, dew point. We can also calculate relative humidity, and we also look out what our visibility is, anything ranging from 0 to the most we've ever quoted is actually 140 miles of visibility on the clearest of days. And we also judge clouds, how much of the sky that they're covering, how many layers we have, and the height of those layers. And we come in here and just write down the information as part of just part of the regular observation. And then we come to the weather wall here and get our wind speeds and wind direction, and then our time of observation. And that's just sent through the National Weather Service. At 45. We're in the thickest of fog. I think winter's definitely here. And we are on the verge of actually having two types of conditions going on at once. Outside, obviously, we're below freezing. We're in the fog. We have rime ice that forms, and right now visibility, I mean, it was only about 100 feet, and winds were quite gusty from the south, so when you walk out our tower door, you pretty much get slammed in the wind instantly. But that can definitely make it fun up here. It truly is home of the world's worst weather. It's just, you never know what to expect, and you can test your limits practically every day.
Boy, it sure looks different than it did in June.
An adventure any day, but particularly so when the conditions are this exciting.
Hampshire was one of the first really tourist destinations for people in New England. Around the turn of the century, there were 24 grand hotels in the White Mountains, the largest concentration of the grand hotels at the time. And people would come here by train. It's the only way you really could get here was by train. It'd be an all-day trip. And they were just wonderful places with full services, and ranging anywhere from 150 to 300 rooms. You know, basically what they did in the grand hotels in that era was they ate, they dressed, they slept, and they ate again, and they walked, and they ate again, and they walked. And so everything was combined in the hotel. It had all the facilities and amenities that you didn't have to go anywhere to do anything else. And it really was a hotel that had 150 or more rooms.
Two of the Grand Resort hotels have reopened recently. Wentworth by the Sea in May of 2003 has a Marriott Hotel and Spa. Built in 1874, $25 million were invested in the renovation. The Mountain View Grand Resort and Spa, originally built in 1865, gained new life when Massachusetts businessman Kevin Craffey, in search of a second home, answered a newspaper ad for a handyman special. The hotel had been closed for 15 years, was in a sad state of disrepair, but piqued the fancy of Craffey, who reopened the Grand Old Resort in May of 2002. In the restoration, 2.5 million square feet of wallpaper in 7 layers was removed, 38 miles of piping replaced, 78 miles of cedar siding restored, 937 windows removed and restored, complete with new sashes and counterweights. The Tower Spa reopened with a Japanese-style hot tub at the top, allowing a 360-degree view of the White Mountains.
The Balsams is a vestige of the past in terms of its hospitality traditions. Places like this are becoming more and more popular. In fact, 2 of the grand resorts have been revived in New Hampshire in the last 3 years. So there are now 4 grand hotels of this scale. There used to be over 30 of this scale here in New Hampshire. And they all operated on what was known as American plan hospitality. There's no charge on any of our menus. There are no prices on any of our menus. There's no charge to play golf. There's no charge to go skiing. There's no charge for any of the 3 rooms of live entertainment in the evening. Everything is included in the one rate, and there's a lot to choose.
As you walk into the Mount Washington Hotel, you're just awestruck really, because of the massive size of the lobby. These lofty ceilings, giant pillars, this long lobby, a massive granite stone fireplace with a fire that's always roaring on cool days or cool nights. And it's very large and elaborate and elegant, but also very inviting and very warming. We have 200 guest rooms. The hotel was originally designed with 350 rooms, but now they all have private baths, and we have suites and different creations of combinations of rooms. What's wonderful about the hotel is that it's really a step back in time. It's an experience that you don't get at your everyday vacation hotel. You feel like you're returning back 100 years ago. it's a real throwback to an experience of the turn of the century.
There's no question that it's the scenery and the greenery and the fall foliage that brings people to this area, because it is such a sharp contrast from what they live in just 2.5 to 3 hours away. We're in now in Franconia Notch State Park, which is probably the queen of the state park system in New Hampshire, and is probably the most visited because it is easily accessible. Interstate 93 comes right through into the area. And the flume here hosts about 250,000 visitors a year who come in to enjoy this kind of a scene.
Flume Gorge is one of the major attractions in the park. 800 feet long, it varies in depth from 70 to 90 feet. The cut narrows to 12 feet in some places, widens to 20 in others. It's a natural cascade, accessible during summer months on board walkways, which are removed in the winter. There are over 100 waterfalls in the White Mountains, many of which are easily accessible with a short hike.
Well, where we're standing now is called the pool, and the Sentinel Pine Covered Bridge. And if you notice the covered bridge, there's a pine tree underneath it. Back in the hurricane of 1938, the huge pine tree fell across the gorge, and they built a covered bridge across the top of it to let people get across. So it's really it's a footbridge, and one of many covered bridges in New Hampshire.
Where you tied up the boat. Can you see it?
Exactly. There was a fellow in the 1800s who espoused a philosophy of life, and he called it cosmogony. I have no idea what that means. And he wrote a little booklet about it, but he had a flat-bottom boat in the pool behind us, and he would take tourists across the little pool and espouse his philosophy, and he drew carvings on the walls of the granite there, and you can see the remnants of some of it, and he would espouse his philosophy for people at that time. And he was really a tourist attraction in his own right. We're an odd lot. We're very independent. We're also a very friendly lot, too, because we've been in the tourist business for a long, long time.
In 1928, my parents were looking for a new location to show their Eskimo dogs. They were Eskimo dog fanciers. They moved down here searching, or they traveled down here searching for a new location along a well-traveled tourist summer highway, and were set up for business in early July of 1928. And the admission to the Eskimo Dog Ranch was 10 cents. This year, 2002, is our 75th anniversary of business. Welcome to Clark's Trading Post on a very chilly October Sunday. My voice is just a little hoarse. I've only been doing this speech since 1949. You're around this ring.
Beginning in May, Murray, his daughter Maureen, and oldest son Murray Jr., with the assistance of another son, Andrew, are in the ring with other significant members of the family, their bears.
Here they are, two little cubby bears, 8 months of age. Here we have the little boy. His name is Penny. Over here's the little girl. Her name is Echo. They're drinking milk and honey just like Ursula, 108 pounds.
I've done most of the training through the years, but my brother and I worked together for many years. And now, it's my daughter in the blue suit over there and my son Murray that are doing the bulk of the training.
That's not normally in your routine. Could you make your way up on top? Or you just want to
In the early days, my parents did the guiding of the people around the Eskimo Dog Ranch, giving the history of Eskimo dogs and pertinent facts and figures. And later, my brother and I started to do some of that. I began in 1934 to entertain the summer visitors. The first bears came in 1931, a grown bear as an added attraction that was out in sight of the highway as a stopper for the traffic and in hopes of getting the people to come into the Eskimo Dog Ranch. And because these pens were designated by the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department for the keeping of wildlife, they had to be so far back from the highway, my father was afraid that the people, the visitors, passers-by, wouldn't be able to see his bears. And so he installed hemlock poles in each pen, built a platform up top, and the bears would climb up and they could be seen from the highway. We taught them to pull up a trolley can with food in it. And so for years, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people would stop here to feed the bears and see them. It was not until after World War II that my brother and I decided to teach and train bears for show work. And the ring is the result. We expanded first by building a gift shop in 1937, and then we slowly began to add buildings. The railroad commenced giving rides in 1958, steam railroad, built our own trackage, and repaired and installed our own locomotives. And so when the aerial tramway went in 1938, that was another attraction along Route 3. And combining with that and our bear pens and these other things, we built the business. In the wintertime, we're either improving or restoring antiques or locomotives or something else so that we're ready for the next summer season. This trading post building, named a trading post because my father had established 3 trading posts up in Labrador for his uncle in New York City in the raw fur business. It was just inevitable that after a while our main building would be called Clark's Trading Post. The white building down here is our first engine house. The next engine house is the brick building up at the beginning of the railroad covered bridge. We built all the railroad equipment you see here, the railroad station, and dismantled and brought a railroad covered bridge from over in Vermont and reassembled it here to pass the crossover, the Pemigewasset River. That's this river here. It's an Indian name and it means crooked waters from high places. It's 120 feet long. It weighs 200 tons. We gathered materials when you could find them. Today, no one could duplicate what we do. Running a family business with so many members is a very emotional experience. It doesn't come easy. The 4th generation is working here now, and it's only give and take that has enabled us to survive. Through thick and thin, war years, we shipped dogs to Iceland for the Norwegian government in World War II, and I delivered dogs over in Scotland in World War II for the British government. Eskimo dogs, sled dogs, to be used in war work. What you see here can't be credited to one person or one generation. We've all worked very hard at it. We try to be distinctively different in what we present and pretty much genuine in all respects.
What do you see for the future?
A lot of hard work for the coming generation, but I don't see any competition in the type of work that we do. And certainly no one is going to get into training bears like we do. It's a dangerous profession. You suffer greatly at the hands of the bears when they're especially young, and you just carry it through until they calm down. It's nothing but scratches and bites when they're young cubs.
Each of the bears has their own personality, their own likes and dislikes, food that they like, and so on. We have two little cubs over behind me, and the little male is a feisty little guy, and when he sees me arriving in the morning, his ears perk up, and like this morning, each time he saw me coming, he would be kind of laid back, and then he would jump up on his feet and start walking on his hind legs, his ears forward, and looking at me. Oh, there's Mommy. I can't wait to see her.
Now, Ursula's father, Jasper, and my father, Murray, worked together in the ring here for 22 hot summers. They put on the show and
to see my children and my brother's children following in the footsteps of the parents and grandparents. On a busy summer day, there are sometimes 20 Clark-related members working at this industry, this business. And my payroll has about 127 faces on it on a summer week. We stop and entertain thousands and thousands of people, and they come back 2 and 3 times a summer, and they stay here half or 2/3 of a day. They won't go away and make room for others to get in.
We kind of consider that we're in the entertainment business as much as we are the restaurant business. The food and the restaurant end of it is kind of a vehicle for that entertainment, that hospitality that we offer our guests. We've been doing it for 15 years now. It's evolved quite a bit over those years. But our focus has always been the food as well as the service. It's all one package.
Best about this, I think the surprise factor of our guests. They come on expecting a really nice ride, which they get, but they don't expect the meal that they get. And I think just the fact that we surprise them with an elegant evening, a phenomenal meal, great service, a friendly staff, a beautiful ride that goes along with it, that whole combination I think throws them completely, because they're not expecting the whole package. They're expecting little snippets of it, but they don't expect the whole package that they get.
Good evening, my name is David. Welcome aboard the Cafe Lafayette dinner train. Our dinner selection this evening, we have the chicken saltimbocca. It's a boneless breast of chicken. They pounded that out and then layered it with fresh baby spinach, fresh garden sage, topped with prosciutto ham and provolone cheese.
The challenges in running a dinner train are many and varied. There's the keeping up with the rolling stock, keeping everything working. It's a lot of machinery, there's generators, there's plumbing, wiring, all kinds of things of that sort that have to work together. Then of course there's the prospect of feeding 150 people in a 2.5-hour window and making it seem fairly effortless. Our recipes are almost entirely now formulated right here on board. If you look in the fridge, you see what's there. You go to the store, you pick the freshest things you can find and use your imagination. We don't have aspirations of being haute cuisine, gourmet, I don't know, really a lot of those words mean, quite frankly. It's basic kind of home cooking, really.
Home cooking perhaps, but many comment this is the best meal they've ever experienced.
The route that we take here on the Cafe Lafayette dinner train is an old spur of the Boston and Maine Railroad. It was built in the late 1800s and was originally conceived and brought into being to carry passengers up to the grand hotels. The track runs along the Pemigewasset River. We travel south. The line never came much further than about a half a mile or 3/4 of a mile north of here. So we travel south along the river, through the fields and forests along the Pemi.
I think my grandfather's parents and my grandmother's parents were bootmakers in Germany, but the business has been running for 4 generations now, or 5 generations, 3 in the United States, 5 altogether in the family. When your name comes to the top of the list, and currently it's 3.5 years before we're even going to deal with starting your order, you're going to have to come in for the final fit. But this tracing right here suffices to get the whole process going. It gives us the length, the width, the instep height, all the measurements, plus this one right here is going to have an orthotic inside for an accommodation. Once that's been established, or the order is ready to start, we pick out what's going to be the appropriate foot model, and you can see here the raw form is the wooden piece, and all the leather is the buildup. And it's just a matter of shaving this down or adding pieces on until you get a dimension matched to the tracing, and then everything's feathered out nice and smooth, and the boot has begun to be made.
Limmer's walls are lined with snapshots sent in by customers. It's likely Limmer boots have been to every significant peak in the world, traveling thousands of miles on trails of every description. Even worn in weddings, though Peter allowed us how their boots often last considerably longer than the marriages. An important part of the Peter Limmer service and business is repair. Cobbler Ken Smith spends his days here, keeping up with the demand. Everything is done by hand, and they'll even repair boots other than those they make.
People always ask, well, you know, what are the advantages of a custom boot? And one thing, of course, is no compromise in the fit. But the other is that leather is not consistent from one part of the hide to the next. And the machine doesn't realize that one piece of leather is going to stretch more than the other or not. And in a custom boot, basically you're going to get the product at the size that it's going to stay at, because you've pulled all the stretch out of the leather, both from left to right. Where in stock boots, if the machine's set to 20 pounds of pull and it might need 30 pounds, one boot might stretch a little more than the other or break in a little bit differently. You know, and it's, as long as you have the backlog estimated right, there's no reason people should be getting upset with how long they have to wait. It's if the backlog was way off, then I could see, you know, the need to try to get more stuff going. I mean, and I won't say, I mean, it would be nice to have the backlog down. A 6-month sustained backlog is as good as 3.5 years. But what happens then when you hit economic hard times and you got to go out and try to look for the work? You know, I'd rather continue doing this than I would have to take some crash course in marketing or something like that.
It takes about 34 hours of work to complete a pair of Peter Limmer's custom-made boots.
The joy I get out of this business is the quality of work, the consistency of the family's ideals, number one. But secondly, I do honestly consider our clients to be part of my paycheck. The fact that, you know, they love coming in, sharing what they've done. People stop in all the time just to say hello. They're driving by. They basically are coming in to show their boots where they started out and stuff like that. I very rarely go home needing an attitude adjustment because of the way the day went. It's not uncommon at all in our repair rack to see a boot that either my dad, uncle, or my grandfather made and have the opportunity to work on it. We've worked on boots. It used to be fun of saying that it wasn't uncommon to work on boots older than me, but as time goes on, that's getting to be a little harder and harder to come by. Hopefully my kids or my grandkids will be working on stuff that I did in another 30 or 40 years.
Shakers as a religious movement actually began in England, and in 1774 a small group of them came to the United States. Like many other people, they were looking for religious freedom, toleration, but they didn't find it. Even though many others found it immediately in America, the Shakers were too strange for most Americans even. And then they organized themselves communally. That meant that they owned all of their property in common, so all of the land they had here at Canterbury, which was over 3,000 acres at their peak, and more than 100 buildings that were built on this site, they took all the profits from their work and put it right back into the community. I think the Shakers are remembered in American culture and in fact are known internationally for their work in design, furniture, architecture. Almost anything they made was made to a standard of excellence that was quite exceptional for its time.
On the opposite side of the state, in Hanover, one of the most formidable and prestigious institutions of higher learning, Dartmouth College. Established in 1769, it's the center of the cultural and intellectual community for the entire region. Throughout New Hampshire, there are a host of communities that are quintessential New England. Some, like the small farming town of Bath, have become institutions unto themselves.
My wife and I, Nancy, own the 4 stores here in Bath. And that's the oldest general store in America, and that's why we bought it, for, you know, a piece of little history and that type of thing. So I was a VP in the Silicon Valley for 25 years in California. We got tired of the rat race and looking for something else for the kids, a little quieter, and saw that for sale in the magazine and decided to jump ship. So it's been great. Well, this is our busiest time of year. We get 500 bus tours in here in 6 weeks. And we have about 26 employees during this time. Everything inside is structurally original from the day it was built. The floors are the same, ceilings are the same, the counters are the same.
Right behind the store, the second oldest covered bridge in the United States and the longest one within New Hampshire's border. In southwest New Hampshire, the small village of Dublin, home to a publication that is consistently on the New York Times bestseller list, a name recognized by 89% of all Americans.
Well, we produce North America's oldest continuously published periodical, the Old Farmer's Almanac. Started in 1792. It was founded by Robert B. Thomas, whose name appears on the very first issue on the cover, and has appeared on every issue since. He edited the almanac from 1892 until 1846. The word almanac means a calendar of the heavens. It's from an ancient Arabic word. So the heart and soul of any true almanac, like the Old Farmer's Almanac, are our calendar pages, which are full of astronomical information, sunrise, sunset, phases of the moon, positions of the planets, and holidays, feast days. It follows the Anglican calendar because that was a tradition of this almanac when it was founded, not for any religious affiliation. When it first started, it was for virtually everybody because everyone was either a farmer or a fisherman, and they needed this information very much in their daily lives. They needed to know sunrise and sunset and phases of the moon. As the population of the country changed, so too did the almanac. It became more general, geared more towards gardening than pure farming, and is a repository. We like to think of it as, in addition to its calendar of the heavens aspect, it's also kind of a repository of our culture.
In 1942, during World War II, a pair of German spies were caught on the coast with a copy of the almanac. The War Department almost closed down the publication, but a compromise was reached to continue without the forecast until the end of the war.
Where is that? Is that the coast?
Over the years, we've gone to yard sales and flea markets and things to build up our collection of old almanacs, because while we have 3 complete sets, there are some years that there are holes in them, literally and figuratively. And what we found is quite fascinating. In some of these old copies that actually belong to different families, you can see that people would actually note things right in the margin that were important to their family. They'd record births, deaths, anniversaries, marriages, right in the pages of the Old Farmer's Almanac. And then they would save them next to the family Bible, because that's how important it was in their daily lives. It was as important as the family Bible.
Since 1852, the artwork on the cover has changed little with the addition of color.
This is the second issue, the 1794 edition. It's one of my favorite issues of the Almanac because here in the back, you'll see right here, is a complete listing of every employee of the federal government. And you can see it fills that whole page and just that little bit of that page. And that's it. Isn't that a wonderful thing? Don't you wonder what it would be today? The Almanac is renowned for its year-long weather forecast. It's based on a formula that was developed in 1792 by Robert B. Thomas. So there's a step-by-step process that any subsequent almanac editor could use to produce the weather forecast. Started with sunspots, so we have maintained that tradition. And increasingly, there's research validating that. There's a clear correlation now, scientific correlation, between solar activity and average temperature here on Earth. And so we're just like one step ahead of that. We say not only does it affect the temperature, but also it influences the long-range weather patterns. My favorite saying in this year's almanac is, age is a high price to pay for maturity.